going on, homies? Everybody say hi to Bog. Bog, come here. Bog, where's Bog? There's Bog. How we doing, man? Hey, are you ready to run this Gambler Free Tournament? Are you gonna come and show up? Yes, you are. Got a short but sweet video for you today. A lot of you guys, if you pay attention to the Gambler social media, I'm actually participating in running the Gambler Free Tournament down on Lake Guntersville out of Waterfront. You can still sign up if you go to www.gambler-bang.com, and there's a sign up form on there, or you can sign up the day of. I'm gonna be helping to running it. That means I can't fish, basically. So, although I don't fish many tournaments, I do have some perspectives on tournaments fishing because I used to fish a lot of the BFLs and that. And this would be kind of a fun one to fish. It's at a cool time of year. It's in October. The grass is high. We just got a little bit of a cool down. But what I'm going to do is I got a lot of questions from you guys about, like, what would you actually throw? Like, if you were fishing, like, what patterns, what techniques would you actually use? What gambler baits would you actually use? So I'm going to go in my boat, and I'm going to show you my stash of all this gambler stuff that I got, and I'm going to show you what I would have out and ready to fish this Gambler Free Tournament out of Waterfront on Lake Guntersville. So hit that like and subscribe button. If you don't do it for me, do it for him. Let's talk how to win a tournament. So my tournament strategy is pretty straightforward. I need some confidence in the morning. Like, I need to have some fish in the well. It's just the way my mind operates. It's not always the best approach, and there's definitely some situations in Florida when you can't focus on a limit. You need to focus on going big. Guntersville, yes. Top 10 lake in the country. There's Mondos in there, but at the same time, fall is one of the toughest times of the year. Depending on how the weather plays out, I want a limit behind me before I go searching for bigs. And so the one thing I'm kind of up in the air on is what I would do in the morning. I'd probably focus on some shallower grass lines, like secondary pockets. So basically the first third back in the creeks. I've seen a lot of schooling fish, and I think I can catch 3 or 4, maybe even a full set of like 5 pounders. That would be awesome. 2 pounders, 5 fish, maybe like 2 pounders, maybe get lucky and catch like a 3 pounder. But what's kind of neat about some of the stuff I've found, these are like basically grass flats that are anywhere from 3 to sort of 5 to 6 feet deep, depending where you are. I can do a lot of things in them. So what I would do is I'd roll into one of those pockets, and I really have 2 baits rigged up. It's a little swimming worm. We did a video on this. This is a burner worm, the 6-inch version. I got it in green pumpkin, and then I have it in some darker colors. So all depending on what the water quality is. Basically, it's a cast and reel presentation. Throw it out, reel it back, kind of tick it on the grass a little bit. And the other one that I'll do that with is a burner crawl. Because what I can do is basically make it sort of like I guess you call it like a swimming worm, but it's a little more like brim looking because it has those wider paddles. So that's back at you. But basically you do the same thing. Put it on like a 3/16, maybe a 1/4 ounce if you're a little bit deeper. If you're shallower, maybe an 1/8 ounce. Just a little Texas rig, which we're going to talk about this guy in a second too. Let's talk about it now. That's why I kind of have this set up. So what this is this is a 3/16 Hog-Tech tungsten with a little 4/0 owner hook. Just a standard O'Shaughnessy. Thank you for whoever taught me to pronounce that word correctly. I have an ace on this thing, but basically it's a 7-foot medium heavy. This is an XD3 Pro. It's a super workhorse all-around rod. So I can either in the morning go ahead and put that burner crawl in there. I can put that burner worm, like a swimming style worm, cast and reel. Is a 721 SLX with 15-pound test. And then later in the day, as we get that high sun, these fish get a little more lethargic. I can go ahead and kind of pitch this ace around or cast this ace around in some of those grass strands that are around that set up in some of these pockets. Be a little more methodical and a little slower with my presentations. But the key being is I don't have to retie. All I need to do is swap these baits out, and I get a totally different presentation. I go from dragging to actually like a reeling or a reactive or a swimming style plastic, and I think that's important. The other thing that I got rigged up for when I'm going and looking at those pockets, a lot of times it's usually a little later in the afternoon, but a lot of times you might see a couple fish pop up in school, and that swimming rig is great for that. But what's even better, and you guys saw this video when I did the fluke video, this is a Gambler Super Stud, which is basically a fluke. I will have this guy tied up. This is on 10-pound fluorocarbon, and as you notice, I do not have my little I don't have my little swivel on there. Normally I tell you guys to put a swivel on it. The trick is on Guntersville we're gonna be fishing around a lot of grass, and I want this thing on top. This is basically the bait that I'm using as a spook style bait or a total topwater bait. If I see a couple fish pop up, I'm throwing it as far as I can, like past them, and I'm super fast, trying to get them to react, fishing it a lot like you'd fish a spook or maybe a buzz bait, like super aggressive, very quick over the top. Because the trick with this tournament is the key to the gambler free tournaments is it's a free and open tournament, but you have to use gambler lures. Your terminal tackle, like hooks and sinkers, you can use whatever you want, but if it's a jig, if it's a soft plastic, you got to use gambler stuff. So it's kind of a cool like situation because you have limiting parameters, but you can kind of work within them to sort of address the bait needs that you have. But definitely have this guy tied on, because whether it's the morning or the afternoon, a fluke or a super stud is it's just good to have on your right side, whether you're dragging a worm, whether you're flipping, as we're going to talk about, because you never know when those fish are just going to pop up to the side, and you need a bait that stays on top, that gets them to react, because they're literally chasing shad and bait that look exactly like that. But basically, that's how I'd start my morning. I'd get out there casting, swimming, trying to cover water, see if some of those fish are kind of off some of that thicker grass, some of that cheesier stuff that you see in these pockets. And then as the sun kind of came up, one thing that I like to do, and this is 100% like a Florida transplant technique. And since Gambler doesn't make floating frogs, what I do is basically have a rig. This is I think it's a 16th ounce lead weight. This is a 5/0 owner offset shank hook. I got a little bobber stopper on there, and then this is 50-pound braid. This is a 7.3 medium heavy rod. I might go a little bit heavier, but I'm doing this sort of towards the edges of the grass mats. And this is a super classic rig in Florida. If you guys ever fish in Florida, you need to have this tied on. But it works up here, and it's something that I don't think they see. And these fish get so much pressure on Guntersville. They see so many floating frogs moving ever so slowly across the surface that sometimes when you do the inverse and you move super quick, super fast, I think they react to it, and they're not as sort of evaluatory. They don't like think about their decision. They don't think about hitting the bait. They just close the deal and hit the bait. But what you'll do is you'll take, this is an easy swimmer. I think it's 4.5 inches long. It's a little bit bigger than the little easy that I put on the back of my chatterbaits. You see this is a Junebug color. I have Junebug, and then I have, let me show you the other one. I have White Lightning. So depending on water color, water clarity, and then depending on the bait that I'm seeing, early in the year right now, there's still a lot of brim in these mattier areas, in these thick areas on Guntersville, and you'll see them pop out. You'll see bass kind of chase them out. And I really think that darker bait, that darker profile, not only does it look like a brim, but I really think the baits that they're chasing in that grass, oftentimes they see them only as silhouettes. They see them as kind of a shadow. So you can never go wrong with dark, but you need to have a white or a lighter sort of more shad mimicking style bait. But all I'm going to do is a classic Texas rig. Basically, I'm going to pop it through the nose just like that, and then I'm going to bring my hook out. You can do this with a screw lock or a belly weighted hook, but I like the Texas rig that tends to keep the bait a little bit better. You use less baits, I guess. They can hold up more, and it also keeps the bait in place, because when you're actually buzzing this across the grass, I'm going to go ahead and Texas rig it. When you're buzzing this thing across the grass, it can knock into a lot of stuff, whether there's pads, whether there's other hard cover. It'll run into a lot of things. So keeping it situated and rigged straight and correctly is important, because you get the most out of your cast. But I can buzz this thing across the mats. I can cover water. Really, I'm looking for little blowholes. I'm looking for little gaps in the grass or junctures, maybe where it goes from that cheesy stuff to milfoil that's still growing, or maybe there's a little like cut where the hydrilla comes in. Basically, grass junctures like we talked about flipping, holes in the grass. Turns are really good, like anywhere where you see kind of that grass line sweep. And then the other thing to remember too, I think a lot of guys will throw this out over the matty, super thick stuff. They'll buzz it for whatever, 20 yards or something like that, and then they'll reel it in before they get to the edge of where that mat drops off. And I'm a strong believer that you might have a fish sort of tracking that. If you guys frog fish a lot, you'll know that these fish, they track the bait. They don't always eat it right when it's in the really thick stuff. Oftentimes when it comes to an opening or something along those lines, that's when they'll close the deal on it, because it's the most opportunistic time. And one thing I think guys miss out on is when you're throwing across these giant mats, you have that edge that might be 5-6 foot in front of you. You always want to reel that bait, especially a frog is hard to work all the way back because it takes forever. But when you're just casting and reeling with this thing, I got this on a 721, my old Shimano Greenie, 50-pound braid. I'm like buzzing this thing like a buzz bait super quick. And you want to make sure you're reeling it from wherever it drops in the mat all the way over the top, because you're basically buzz baiting it with that tail, making a blub blub, and you want to bring it at least a foot or two off that mat line where the mat ends, just in case there was a fish that was tracking it towards the edge, or maybe from all the way back that follows it all the way down, and they get to that edge and it's the point of no return and they close the deal. So definitely remember that when you're buzzing and easy, it's easy to it's easy to reel it up and make that next cast super quick. But just keep in mind, these fish are opportunistic eaters. They're looking for those edges and those more efficient areas where they can stalk and eat a bait. And that edge is super easy to cover when you're burning this thing back. So that's what I'll be doing for most of the day. I'm going to leave this rigged up actually, because I get to fish during the free tournament. I just don't get to fish the free tournament. So moving later into the day, and this is where it becomes somewhat of like a philosophy on how you approach fishing. Actually, I got to guess. We're going to do another video, but that's Tyler Wilcott over there. He fishes the MLF Pro Circuit. But we're going to get to him because me and him are going to do a really cool video, which I think you guys are going to enjoy. But as you get later into the day with tournament fishing, it becomes sort of what you have confidence in. And if you guys watch the videos, I love to flip. And really this time of year, frogging and flipping and focusing on that heavy grass is a great way to get some bigger bites. And I'm able to put my head down and go and punch those mats, punch that thicker cover, and really focus on that. So if I were fishing the Derby, definitely you could pick up one of these guys, an ace, a stick bait, and go down and fish strands of grass, fish grass edges, and even fish some medium depth structure. And when I say medium depth, 6 to sort of 12 feet seems about key, hard spots and that, and then you can look for schooling fish on top. But if I'm being 100% honest with how I've approached this Derby, I'd have this guy out. And this is a BB Cricket. It's a little compact punching bait. I have it set up with a Hogtech 1.5 double bobber stopper. This is on 80-pound braid, big old 7 foot 11, heavy action flipping stick. I would have some other options though too. I'd be punching the whole day. I'd probably focus on 2 types of cover. That'd be hydrilla 6 foot, 5 foot, but then I'd also look at chop grass mats, like where the eelgrass and that junk grass comes all together. But there's a lot of that, so I'm looking for something a little different. Maybe where it meets pads, maybe where it turns, maybe there's a little bit of a creek channel that butts up against where the edge is created. A lot of times the current will blow that stuff in. But the one thing I'm always keeping in mind when I'm flipping is you sort of, just like when you're fishing a worm or maybe fishing a chatterbait, you sort of need to figure out how active or how much action these fish want out of the bait. What are they actually reacting to? This time of year, would start with the BB Cricket. There's been some big tournaments out there with a lot of boats. These fish are seeing a lot of baits. That compact presentation is something I have a ton of confidence in. And I know that, one, the brim will knock at it, so I'll know which mats are holding bait. And then also, I know big ones catch it, or big ones bite it. And I don't miss them when they're being kind of picky and choosy about stuff and maybe swiping at the bait. However, sometimes you need a little more of a kicking action. And if that's going to be the case, I will strap on, where is that? Right here, stingers. Like the Gambler Stinger, I love this thing for flipping mats. And as I've told you in past videos, the one downside to it is the upside. It has a very thin profile. It's very supple plastic. It tears up easy, and the snell kicks through easily. But when you have kind of swipey bass, that can be a huge benefit. So it also, the way it differentiates itself, I guess, from the BB Cricket, and the way I'll know I need to pick this thing up is if fish seem a little more active in the mat, they're darting around, maybe they're chasing stuff on top. This has a more traditional, like, kicker kind of tail to it. So instead of the BB Cricket, which is basically just maybe shaking a little bit as it goes and drops through that mat and falls through very quickly, this has a little more of a kicking motion, kind of like the burner crawl or like a swimming sort of appendages that are going to go down. It's going to slow your fall rate a little bit, but it's also going to create more disturbance. And sometimes the fish just like that. They like more action, more kicking action, instead of that subtle sort of do-nothing action you get out of the BB Cricket. But those would be pretty much my picks, and that's how I'd approach the tournament. You know, the morning would be kind of chasing down kind of a limit, throwing your moving baits, throwing that fluke, throwing that swimming worm and that burner cross, swimming it around the grass, and then I gradually move in towards some of that thicker cover, that cheesier stuff, buzzing that easy swimmer over the top of the grass, trying to get a few reactions from some bigger fish. And then once that sun got high, I'd pick up the flipping stick and I'd just go to town. You know, I'm flipping edges, I'm flipping deeper in where maybe I think some of those frogfish that I saw blow up are. I'm really just focusing on that super heavy cover, trying to pick up 1 or 2 4 to 5 pound class fish, and I can guarantee you they're there, and those 2 baits will catch them. But I hope to see you guys out there. If you guys got any questions about the Gambler Free Tournament, drop them down in the comments box, or hit up Paul at Waterfront or GTO, and I will be out there Saturday morning hanging out with Bog. So come down and see us if you're in the area. Come down and fish with us, and I hope you have awesome luck and catch a bunch of bass. It will be fun. So tight lines for now. Hit that like and subscribe button. We are out.